Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. My name is Haley and I am your host. I work at an OBGYN clinic where I teach women and couples how to chart their cycles so they can either achieve or avoid pregnancy and also to manage their fertility. I have a huge passion to teach women and couples about the beauty of their fertility and how the pill is never the answer to women's health. There's a lot of good and not so good information out there about fertility. And so my goal with this podcast is to help you sort out the truth from the weeds. I want to teach you how to chart your cycle and to reach your family planning goals while also maybe even possibly locating hormonal imbalances and to receive proper treatment. I want to help you get in the best hands that you can with the best doctors that you can to reach optimal reproductive health. So if you're ready to get on this journey with me to learn more about your reproductive system, how it was created and how it should be working, and the best medicine in order to make it work if it's not, then you are in the right place. Welcome to the Truth and Fertility podcast. Today I am interviewing Ginny Noce. Noce, right? Did I get that right?
Noce, you're close.
Noce, okay. And she and I met at a conference back in February. And it's funny, I've interviewed multiple people from this because I met so many amazing women there and they are so phenomenal and knowledgeable about their specific fields. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to pick these people's brains. And so I'm like, Ginny, we're going to chat. I honestly just want to pick your brain today about all things nutrition. So Ginny is the founder of the Women's Health RN, which she'll tell us about here in a minute. But she is a nutritionist, correct? Nutritionist?
Yeah, legally, I say I'm just like a nurse with a master's degree in nutrition.
Okay. Well, you are a nutrition expert for me, right? So you also have a history of PCOS. So I really want to dive into that because so do I. And yeah, I'm just really excited about our conversation today, all things nutrition. So Ginny, welcome. If you want to just give an introduction to yourself and your business.
Yes, I'm always working on how to make it concise because people are like, what are you? So, formally trained as a registered nurse. And I definitely have a unique background that I started my nursing career in reproductive endocrinology. And so that is where I started with like my deep love for just hormones. I worked under some amazing doctors to really understand deeply, hormone physiology. And while I worked for them, I then got a master's degree in nutrition and functional medicine because where I really saw the disconnect was, okay, great. The clinic I was working at was definitely a step above conventional women's healthcare of, they were not dismissing women or just, suggesting the pill, but they still were only suggesting women medication and then maybe just telling them to like not eat ice cream. And I'm not even kidding. There's don't eat ice cream. Like that's too much sugar. Okay. So while I was working with them, I'm doing my master's and I'm just like, hello, there is so much research how nutrition impacts hormones. And simultaneously throughout all of this, I'm going through my own PCOS journey with very little to no answers myself. So that really dove me into the whole world of root cause nutrition or functional medicine, and working to really marry together the restorative reproductive endocrinology viewpoints with functional medicine. So I always say that's really where my practice comes in. It's that kind of like, again, restorative reproductive medicine meets functional nutrition because there's also functional nutrition things that I don't agree with. People are doing some weird things in functional medicine. So kind of really bridging the gap between those two and, really trying to be evidence-based at the same time because in the nutrition world, there is just a lot of, for lack of a better word, BS going on. So, we're really trying to make sure we're staying up to date in the research. But at the same time, I say we're evidence-based but not evidence beholden. So, if we feel that something is working and maybe we don't have the strongest research on it, we're not going to discredit that at the same time. So at the core, we're just really trying to bridge the gap that women are experiencing right now in both conventional and restorative reproductive medicine.
Yeah. And I am really getting into this whole idea of functional medicine because especially with being so wanting to heal the root cause of whatever it is, right? We're getting our mindset into that, like, okay, we're not hopefully not wanting the pill anymore, right? For whatever issue that we're experiencing. But then can we even go a step further to say, okay, well, maybe not even go the medicine route, or sometimes women have to, but let's actually address diet. Let's address lifestyle first, because that's going to be like the ultimate change. So yeah, so good. Tell me a little bit about when somebody comes to you through the Women's Health RN, what are typical symptoms that they're experiencing? Maybe they already know that they have PCOS or something to that extent. And then what are the typical ways that you start with treatment for this woman?
Yeah, so with my practice, we are seeing kind of, I would say, really full scope women's health, like painful periods, PMS, gut health issues, yes, PCOS, endometriosis, infertility. So we're kind of seeing the spectrum. And I will say, basically, common theme is someone comes with a diagnosis like, oh, I have PCOS, but then I also have constant bloating, my energy super low, my sleep sucks, and maybe I do have like PMS and like just low mood, low libido, they're kind of hitting all those general hormone imbalance pieces, just not feeling great. And I think that's also too, where I just really don't see medicine help that much. I see it really change maybe hormones, but really the quality of life of that person. And that's what this is really all about, right? Getting someone to have a high functioning life where they have good digestion on a daily basis. They can get through their day without an energy crash. They sleep through the night. And we're not going to be perfect 100%. We're not going to feel perfect. I think that's, a very scary place that I think functional medicine is going, like the whole biohacking that you need to feel like incredible 100% of the time. And I think that is a little bit of like, I would say the devil coming in, because that's, we are humans. Like we are human
Yeah.
beings. We're not going to feel
Yeah.
100% all the time, but you shouldn't feel like 50% all the time. Right. So we need to
Right.
find that balance of like, you should generally feel well on a daily basis. Here and there, you had a weird night, you didn't sleep well, you're a little fatigued, no big deal, but you're on like the men the next day. That's what we like to see. I would say chronic headaches, migraines, whether that be related to someone having like a menstrual migraine, we see that a lot as well. So basically that's kind of what we're really seeing, is that, I'm not just someone's like only PCOS and something else. We're really seeing that they're coming with maybe one or two diagnoses, and then another myriad of just general women's health symptoms, if that makes sense, right? And this makes sense because if there is underlying dysfunction, so going into what we do, I always say I don't necessarily care about a diagnosis per se. I care, but really, I'm at the end of the day, there are driving root causes that are giving this systemic or hormonal issues. And so what we're really assessing in practice is blood sugar regulation, nutrient status, inflammation, gut health, and so many things that go along with gut health, I should say, like, how well you're digesting, is there an infection, your microbial balance, and mitochondrial function. So how well are your cells actually functioning? So those are kind of some of the key pillars that we're looking at, because if you have, if your cell's dysfunctional, mitochondrial stress, if your cell's dysfunctional, your organs can be dysfunctional. Your organs dysfunctional, your organ systems are going to be dysfunctional, right? So I do think a lot of it, and a lot of my mind frame that was passed down to me by my mentor, Dr. Brian Walsh, is really the health at the level of the cell. Is your cell getting enough nutrients? What is your cell membrane integrity? If there's anything attacking your cell, inflammation, and those things, you're going to have systemic dysfunction, right? So when we are able to take that, I would say, cellular approach, that's when we're able to support energy, sleep, gut health, hormones, all with like one protocol, so to speak, right? Because where people get locked down is like, if you have PCOS, you only use like these 3 supplements or whatever, and it's like, that's not actually treating the person and their specific issues. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that all makes really good sense. My my first thought is, how do you test for these things? Like, you're talking about things at the cellular level. So when somebody is coming to you, like maybe they do have the blanket diagnosis of PCOS, and I always use PCOS as an example because that's my experience, but it doesn't have to be PCOS, right? But maybe they have that quote unquote diagnosis, but then they're also experiencing those other symptoms that you were just saying. How do you start by like actually going through the discovery of figuring out, okay, what is causing these issues?
So yeah, so with every client, we are doing our comprehensive blood panel. And in our blood panel, and I have a free guide that I literally give you exactly what markers I run, like no gatekeeping, and the ranges we use. The issue is that, doctors are typically not willing to run these things, and they're not going to usually utilize the ranges, and they're not going to know what to do nutritionally or supplementally. So I just give that disclaimer of like, I want to show you those labs, but if you run to your doctor with them, your labs are only as good as its interpretation, right? So I just give that disclaimer. I want to show people. So, we are assessing with our blood labs. We can look at blood sugar markers. We can look at mitochondrial function. We can look at certain nutrients in the blood, not all of them, but some key ones like iron, copper, magnesium, vitamin D. So we are able to look through that. And I think inflammatory markers are huge. And then there's also just like little blood labs, like in a basic blood chemistry, like a complete blood counter, complete metabolic panel, that can give you insight into cellular function. For example, bilirubin, that's on a complete metabolic panel. If it's low, can actually indicate mitochondrial dysfunction. So if you actually know how to really deeply interpret a blood chemistry, it can open a lot of doors. So we do our blood panel, and then we also do a GI map stool test. So that's the one we're taking your stool sample and they're going to test it we're going to look at if there's any outright infections, H. pylori, parasites, candida, which is fungus, or if there is how well your good bacteria versus your bad bacteria and what that balance looks like. And then your digestive function. So how well are you digesting your food? You could be eating all the good food in the world, but if you're not digesting it well, then it's not going to do you any good, right? No wonder, like, I had this one client, we are just on the phone the other day. I was doing her initial consult, and her blood chemistry was just like so much nutrient deficiencies. And she's like, why am I so nutrient deficient? I looked at her GI map, and it was like, because you're not breaking down and digesting these things. And she had a really inflamed gut lining. And if your gut lining is also really inflamed, you're going to have a hard time also absorbing your nutrients. So and she also wasn't eating that great. So she had like a triple whammy going on. You're not digesting, your gut's inflamed, and you're not eating nutrient dense food. Like, yeah, you're going to be pretty nutrient deficient. And she actually had PCOS, right? So in her case, I'm not doing maybe some very, I don't know, inositol with her. Like maybe we'll do that eventually, but like she needs nutrients. And we know nutrient deficiencies are associated with PCOS too. And nutrient deficiencies could make insulin resistance worse, which could make, your PCOS worse. So with PCOS, there's so many, I'd say, pointing fingers, right? So like everything that could contribute to PCOS, like nutrient deficiencies, gut dysbiosis, poor detoxification or accumulation of toxins, blood sugar imbalances. Not only can those directly influence and have that causation towards PCOS, but then they can also equally increase each other. Like, right, if you have like, nutrient deficiencies, that will increase inflammation. Well, if you increase inflammation, that increases PCOS, right? And so it's all kind of a vicious cycle. So, and then lastly, I'll mention of like how we're also assessing these things is also looking at we have everyone fill out like a 3-day diet, lifestyle, food journal and evaluation form. And I could tell someone many times now, like, I don't need to tell you have glucose dysregulation. I'm looking at your food. I can tell you that, I don't need your blood test to tell me that you are nutrient deficient. I can tell you you're not eating nutrient rich foods, right? So I think that's also a little what I've seen lost in like the world of functional medicine, people heavily relying too heavily on testing. I think it's helpful. Of course, I run it, but I think we've also, and a lot of functional medicine doctors, they're not deeply trained in nutrition. They go take a weekend seminar, and now they're basically using supplements as they would have medication and just doing like a strict elimination diet. We are very, very selective in our nutrition interventions. We mainly focus on what foods you should be adding in based on your clinical picture, based on your labs, and naturally you will decrease the foods that you shouldn't eat. If we talk about what to include. But so many times I'm just seeing people like, my doctor just told me to go gluten and dairy free. I'm like, well, that doesn't tell you what nutrients you should be including that will help your condition. Soapbox there, but I think that has been super underrated. How people structure their meals is so important as well. So we're definitely, yes, we use labs, but then we also, again, just look at someone's diet and lifestyle, and that can tell us so much in and of itself.
Yeah. And that's all, man, I have so many different questions that and like ways that I could take this. Because, okay, you said that a lot of functional medicine doctors are just, they're giving you supplements now. Is there a benefit to getting these nutrients that you're deficient in? Is there a benefit to getting these from actual foods rather than just a supplement?
So I would say I take the approach of both.
Okay.
I do think I do think our food quality has been absolutely compromised. I mean, our soil is very depleted in nutrients because we are mass producing food, and we don't have good farming techniques. And it is well known that our food is much less nutrient dense than it used to be. So, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is this just in America, like when talking about this, or is this kind of like a
I do think it's America's worse. I definitely
yeah,
think other countries are better. But I can't say I've done like the research too
sure,
much.
sure.
But I probably would say it's probably worldwide in mostly industrialized countries because we are mass
Okay.
producing food, right? If
Yeah.
like farming techniques, I am not a farmer, but I've read a few World War II books now, and like they're like work that they have to do to farm to just get like measly amount of food. It's like
Right.
tell you that we are not doing that diligent farming practice,
Yeah.
and you really can't to mass produce food. Truly, I mean that's really
Yeah.
where the whole issue in America is how do you feed this amount of people but also feed them well. I think we're in a conundrum here, but that's a whole separate topic. So
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you. That was just I was like,
no,
is this
no,
this
it's a
is an
really good
American thing, isn't
question.
it?
But I will say that like because I was talking with I did the Hormone Genius podcast, and I think it was Jamie who was like, just being like we can't get all of our nutrients through food, and I do agree, but I also think a lot of people are not. I suggest like three to four servings each of fruits and veggies daily, and you pick me someone that is getting 3 to 4 servings each of fruits and veggies. You would probably be doing pretty good if you did that and eat your whole sources of meats, and eggs and seafood. But people are like, I don't want to eat oysters, like they're gross. But I'm like, they're such good sources of zinc and copper, which are so important for our hormones, right? So I think there's a level of like, and like I'll be like dark leafy greens, like eat bok choy, and like people are not going to eat bok choy. And so I think there is like our palates as Americans are not where they should be. For example, like people don't like fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi. I don't. I didn't grow up eating those. Those would be great for your gut. So I think that if I could have someone eat everything I actually wanted them to eat, the oysters, the kimchi, the bok choy, yeah, I think we probably wouldn't need supplements. But unfortunately, that's where I'm like, then if you're not going to do that, that's where supplements come in. So we just take that reasonable approach. I tell people I'll use omega-3s for an example too. I'm like, can you eat 2 servings of fish a week? And some people are straight up like, no, I hate fish. And I'm like, okay, well then we're supplementing. Like, and I would say that's like on a personal, and would it probably be better to eat the whole food? Yes, because it's not just going to have the omega-3s. It's going to come with a lot of other nutrients. But we deal with what we do. Like, we just deal with people's dietary preferences and do the best we can. And ultimately, I try to give that choice, if that makes sense. Like, hey, you can take this, a supplement with more zinc in it, or you can eat oysters. Okay, most people choose to supplement. So that's where we're at.
I would.
Yeah, beef
Yeah.
liver is another one. I really like beef liver. Will you eat beef? And a lot of these foods used to be part of our traditional diets. Like, I'm not a huge, like, paleo carnivore, and definitely not that at all. But I definitely do think there is a level of traditional diets that, we've absolutely lost. Like, we used to eat organ meats. Again, how much of our food used to be fermented because we had to store it, and so we've lost a lot of those traditional habits that were so good for us. So I think that's also a big reason why we've run into nutrient deficiencies as well.
Yeah. And that makes so much sense, especially too, like when you're eating those foods, it's not just that one nutrient that you are getting. Like you said, you're getting all of the other benefits from that food too. But I am grateful we have supplements because not everybody wants to eat beef liver, right? So, but okay, so when you're running a panel on somebody and you're doing that preliminary work and investigative work, and you see these nutrient deficiencies, are you placing like a type of diet for them? Like, are you telling them like, okay, I want you to eat this, this, and this, don't eat this, this, and this? Is that where you start? Like, tell me a little bit about how you take the information that you've gotten based on their food journal and based on their labs, based on what you're seeing in their stool, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, so we create about a 40-page protocol document for all of our clients, that we go over in that initial consult. So in our initial consult, we'll go through, I try to make our evaluation form like pretty detailed so that it captures a lot of someone's history. But I'll definitely ask, I love hearing people's timelines. So helpful for my brain. And I think that you can get so much clinical clues from a timeline. And that was something that was very deeply, I don't know, integrated in me during my master's program. Like functional medicine, like they love a timeline because it's so helpful. So I'll usually kind of just back up, get their whole timeline, and then we'll dive into their labs together. I review it with all of my clients pretty in depth, because I'm a really big fan of informing people. I think that really comes from my background as a nurse, of just that education piece. I think so many people leave whether that any office, because people are not spending adequate time with them. They're not like they don't understand why they're taking something or why they're going to do a dietary, thing. And then that leads to them not being compliant. And I think that's my biggest thing. If I can teach you why I'm telling you to do something, I think when you know better, you do better. Right. If I tell you all the reasons to eat this food, you're going to be like, oh, I'm more apt to eat this food versus just like eat it with not a good explanation, So anyway, so we're going through the labs, and then we come up with, yes, a really detailed document going through exactly the foods that we want them to eat. I used to do like, here are all the nutrients I want you to get, and here's where you could get that for different foods. But I really found that was more overwhelming for people. It was like more overwhelming to give more options, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you're just like, here's like, it was even for me, if I look at a page and it's like vitamin E, vitamin A, and it's like all these different foods, it's like, how do you like orient that in your brain? So we really get specific on like, I want you to eat, not only do I want you to eat 4 cups of vegetables, but these specific vegetables I want you to eat. Not only do I want you to eat 2 to 3 like servings of fruit, but these are the specific fruit that I want you to eat. I want you to include this amount of flax and chia seeds to support your digestion. I actually want you to include Brazil nuts because they're going to have selenium, which is good for your thyroid, which would be good for your case. This is how much protein I want you to eat. We calculate everybody's macros. So meaning like how much calories, protein, carbohydrates, and fat you should be eating based on your height, weight, activity level, and needs. So now this definitely, it's a little overwhelming at first, but then we're kind of breaking it down. It also really depends where the person's at. I will say most of our clients, they'll come ready to like flip over backwards and do whatever we say. They've like been through it, they're just like ready to go. Other people, I don't mean this like, I truly ask people, I'm like, do you know what like a fat, carbohydrate, and protein are? Like, do you have a good understanding of like what that looks like? And some people are like, honestly, no. And that's totally fine. Then I take some steps back, and we're like, oh, okay, we got to do some like more nutrition education here. So we will definitely tailor like how far we go in that initial consult with that person. So my brain is I create the whole like Mac Daddy protocol all together, but then we're kind of diving into that throughout our program. So it's a 4-month program, how we work with our clients. So yeah, we get pretty specific. And then, a really big principle that I teach most of our clients is our plate method of how we plate our foods. And so, giving your guys, and I think I put this somewhere on one of my free guides, but, essentially we try to have about half the plate be non-starchy veggies. And again, those are specific to that person of what we think would be best for them. 1/4 their plate, starchy veggies, or I should say, sorry, a whole food carbohydrate. So like fiber rich carbohydrates. And then 1/4 the plate being a protein source. And again, the plate method is great because it helps you create a meal out of like anything. Like, you're not just like beholden to recipes. You can kind of mix and match things. And then you can use that template for then the specific foods that we want you to eat. Right. So if we told you to eat this many, whatever veggies, you know how much to put on half your plate, and then whatever protein, oysters, whatever you can, put on 1/4. So that's kind of, then we walk everyone through the plate method, their macros, and then their supplements, and then any lifestyle things. Some people were working on sleep a little bit more, some people were working on working out and what that actually, specifics with that. So yeah, we're getting pretty like nitty gritty. Hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. And I think, yeah, especially the plate example that you gave, because as you were talking about like, okay, you need depending on this person's situation, they're going to want to eat this vegetable over this vegetable and this fruit over this fruit. And in my head, I'm thinking that makes so much sense. Like if they're deficient in a type of nutrition or a nutrient, then you're telling them exactly what to eat in order to help them fill that nutrient. But at the same time, as you already mentioned, that can be really overwhelming. So I think the plate example, like, and half veggies, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Because whenever I always fill my plate with the protein, and then we'll do like the veggies and the starch are like the sides, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you say half veggies? Like what? I know veggies are good for you, but why half?
So, well, I think that's so important is the type of veggie matters, because for example, if like half your plate's green beans, like green beans aren't bad, but they're not like super nutrient dense. But like if half your plate is like your cruciferous veggies, like if you have broccoli that was mixed with like some onion and garlic, that is very therapeutic, very rich in compounds that are great for detoxification. Broccoli has vitamin C. So yeah, definitely the type of veggie can matter. And your veggies are going to help to increase. There are many reasons, I would say. So number one is we actually teach our clients, another clinical pearl is that actually to eat your veggies first in your meal. Eating veggies first has been shown to actually decrease your glycemic impact of that meal. So reduce your blood sugar spike. So if you eat your veggies first, your protein second, your carbohydrates last, ideally, obviously if you're having a taco, you can't really do that. But, I say, when you can do it, when it makes sense, like let's be reasonable here. But yeah, your veggies really are so rich in micronutrients. And, some people will fight back. I'm not sure how much you've been in like heard about carnivore and those things at this point. A little bit,
yeah.
And, people will be like, they have like, anti-nutrients that actually like you don't absorb as much things or it's bad for you. And those anti-nutrients, like for example, oxalates, this is kind of going into a whole principle that you didn't ask about, but I'm telling you anyways, is actually has been shown to be a healthy stressor to our cells. And it actually helps to increase our strength of our mitochondria. And so really those plants, actually those anti-nutrients, and this is why I'm always just like the body is so infinitely smarter than we are. We were built and designed to have that little bit of a stressor to our body. And it's actually a good thing. It's called hormesis is the principle. So it actually has been shown to be beneficial. And also in the studies in which anti-nutrients are quote unquote bad, you would usually need to have like 4 or 5 cups of that singular vegetable to get to the dose that they use in the in vivo or the cell studies. So it's not in clinical practice. And if we look at pretty much any research right now, when it comes to, looking at dietary patterns, those who eat more veggies have way better health outcomes. So your veggies are going to help boost your micronutrients, despite the anti-nutrients that are in them. They support your mitochondria. They're also going to be great for your gut health, which is so great for your immune system and great for overall body functioning. I'm trying to think any reason, other more reasons why I love veggies. So I'd say like, yeah, mainly their nutrients and their benefit on your gut health. So, yeah, so I think they're huge. And then the other big thing is when you have them half your plate, that's also going to really help you in general with just better plate structure, so meal structure. So when you have your plate half non-starchy veggies, you're not leaving a lot of room for carbohydrates, right? And so you're naturally going to balance your meal better, and not be over your carbohydrates. They increase satiety. So as we know in America, we have a really big obesity, crisis going on, and it's no one's fault. We have hyperpalatable food that are making people overeat. They're not satiating enough. So they're making people overeat. It's not a willpower issue. And so where veggies can come in is that they can actually really help to increase satiety and help regulate our appetite hormones. So many reasons why I love veggies.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. So my next question then would be, okay, you give somebody this detailed information of the nutrients that they're deficient in, what veggies, what diet, and when I say diet, I don't mean like paleo, keto. I just mean diet, like what
How you
food
eat.
to eat. Yes, how you eat. Is this going to be like for somebody who's coming to you in real life and you give them this plan, is that going to be like what they need to eat for the rest of their lives? Like what do you get my question? Like how like, because this truly is a lifestyle change, which is, I'm totally on board with you, like, which is really what we need to be doing first, see how that changes things, and then maybe do some other things on top of that if the lifestyle change isn't cutting it. But I think that being the starting point really, really is the best way to truly heal somebody from the ground up. But with this lifestyle change, with all of like this really detailed understanding of the nutrients that they're deficient in, is it a temporary diet and then they can go back to just eating healthy? I mean, you shouldn't be going back to eating ice cream every night, but eating healthy, or is this diet like what they need to be doing for the rest of their lives?
I would say, and we also try to be, my principle is 80-20, like 80%, this is what you do, 20%, don't worry about it, right? Because really it's about what you do 80% of the time that's going to really make the biggest impacts on your health. And we really try to be like the flexibility in there with the plate method. Like, if you're doing, and we're not like, you can only have like one source of one, fiber rich carbs. Like, no, we give them lots of options with like, there's so many options. You have your potatoes, your rice, your quinoa, your fruit, right? You have so many options. So it really is supposed to be a long-term like lifestyle change and like a long-term diet. But what I've really heard, and what was my goal too, is that, everyone's like, this is very flexible and very doable. We don't tell people like, unless someone has maybe endometriosis, Hashimoto's, or they have like a marker that comes back on the GI map stool test that says, hey, you really shouldn't have gluten. Like, other than that, like, I'm pretty much like, there's no food that you need to completely cut out. Like, you can pretty much have anything in reasonable, form. If you want to go have pasta like once a week, great. Just make sure it's 1/4 your plate, no big deal. And then, like the rest of the week, like you should have like your more nutrient dense form. So carbohydrates, right? No big deal. We move on. So it really has, this is the feedback that I've gotten, is actually allowed people to not be in a restrictive mindset. And if they want to change things up once or twice a week, they have the flexibility to do so and still support their body at the same time. So yeah, it's supposed to be long-term, and I haven't had any complaints, and more so I have my clients like, messaging me being like, I'm still doing so good and I'm feeling so good. And that's really the point too, is that, when someone's feeling really good, and this is the feedback that I've gotten as well, is that when they feel really good and so then they deviate from it, because life happens, they go on vacation, or maybe they're like, I'm feeling good. So, people will be like, I feel good. So then they like, loosen up the reins, so to speak, or they're just not as consistent. They're like, oh, I feel that. Like, I feel when I don't eat the way, like when I don't eat enough veggies, oh my God, when I don't eat enough protein, like when I don't structure my meals well, like they feel it and they want to go back to eating that way. And I think that's like the biggest compliment that I could have ever received in my life, you know?
Oh yeah. When when you're working with somebody and they have a success story, I mean, that is the absolute best thing ever. So I want to talk more about just kind of the nitty-gritty of the foods,
Mhm.
because you mentioned already, okay, broccoli is better than green beans because it has more nutrient dense.
Mhm.
It is more nutrient dense. You were saying that pasta, you can have it like once a week as long as it's a quarter of your plate, but then there's better carbs that you could be having. So tell me a little bit, just like the practicals, like, okay, what is the better carb that you could be having?
Yeah.
Like, what are the foods? We can just go like carb, veggie, protein, maybe,
Yeah.
but what are the foods that are okay in moderation, but then on the daily, you want to actually be eating?
Yeah. So carbohydrates, we'll start with those first. I'd say my favorite carbohydrates are roots and fruits, is what I say. So your root veggies, so your sweet potato, your squash, your potatoes, those are going to be really rich in fiber per the amount. Like, and I think it's so important to like compare like per like one potato, how much grams of fiber is that, and per per one serving of pasta, right? You'll see the difference. And then nutrition wise, are your root veggies are going to have a lot more antioxidants, minerals like potassium, which a lot of Americans, about 98% of Americans, do not reach their daily recommendation of potassium intake. So that one's huge. So I really love those. And then your fruits, I mean, again, so rich in fiber, so rich in antioxidants. I think fruit is amazing. So especially though with some specific fruits, I love like your berries, your apples, and your citrus fruits. Bananas are like okay, but they're a little bit high glycemic, so they can spike your blood sugar a little bit, and then like they don't have a ton of antioxidants. They have some potassium. Everyone I feel like knows that about bananas. But I really like, again, your berries, and any type of berry. Again, see, right, this is where the flexibility, it's like, oh, I could have, there's like 4 different types of berries. Right? Citrus fruits. Oh, I could have, a kiwi or a clementine or orange or a grapefruit, right? And you have like 4 options within that category. And then whichever apple you enjoy. Those are just some of my favorites. Those aren't the only things you need to eat. Cherries are also a great honorable mention. And then other carbohydrates I would say that I really like, is I call the category resistant starches. So this is going to be the best way to explain resistant starch is, how an unripe banana is very different than a ripe banana. That unripe banana has resistant starch. That's what you're tasting. You're like, what is this? And then as it ripens, that resistant starch turns to sugar. The resistant starch is amazing for a gut microbiome. Your certain gut bugs feed off of this resistant starch, and then those bugs can produce, they're called postbiotics, called short chain fatty acids. And those short chain fatty acids like butyrate are extremely anti-inflammatory and great for the metabolism. So it's like this whole chain of events that you set off. So I always think of like your carbs as like really feeding your gut, because those are really going to have like the fiber, and fiber is really what feeds your gut microbiome. And you want like a wide variety of different types. So then with your resistant starch, where you can get that is beans, legumes. You could eat unripe bananas if you would like. And then also, if you cook and cool grains, so rice, quinoa, even potatoes, even if you freeze bread, and then if you like reheat it, but if you freeze your bread, then that cooling process, so you cool like the grains at like room temperature for about 20 to 30 minutes, and that cooling process, it builds resistant starch. And that is also beneficial for your blood sugar as well. So there's also studies on like rice, because in the traditional, I want to say Japanese cultures, they actually freeze their rice. And that actually been shown to be really beneficial for their blood sugar because it builds resistant starch. So those are kind of my big categories for carbohydrates. So, and that's a lot of options. I don't know, in my opinion. And so
Yeah, no, I agree.
that kind of leaves out like the cookies, the cakes, the bagels, just a lot of that processed, refined sugar, refined flour foods. But I'm going to put my butt here. Like, if someone, for my PCOS people who like blood sugar is huge, I'm like, listen, like if you're at an event and like you really want a cookie or, whatever, or like if you're going out to eat and you want like a burger and fries, and I say, try to choose your carb. Like, I will do a bunless burger, but I'll eat the fries. So, it's, you don't have to be super restrictive, but you can be smart. And I think that's like informed eating. I don't like intuitive eating. I like informed eating. Like, you're informed about your choices and you're choosing it, instead of like you just feel restrictive and you feel like you don't have a choice, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, so those are, just carbs. Veggies, I would
Yeah.
say, favorites would be, I talked about cruciferous. I love garlic and onion. And I'll also mention, just if you have issues digesting those, that's a sign of a deeper issue, not that you just should not have those foods. So just saying.
Okay.
Like, garlic makes me have gas. I'm like, that's not normal. Maybe at first, like if you're going from like no fiber and then you load up on a bunch of fiber, yes, you can initially have some like gas bloating for a week or two because you don't have the gut microbiome to digest those foods. So, anywho's, I love your dark leafy greens, rich in folate. I mean, that's so important for fertility and pregnancy. So many micronutrients in there as well. I like carrots a lot. I just think they're rich in beta carotene, which is a form of vitamin A, and they're easy. Like, I'm also about like what's easy. I love bell peppers, super rich in vitamin C, which is awesome for progesterone. Those would be kind of like my top veggies, I'd say. And then protein sources. I just like all whole food. I say whole food proteins. Like, I love your wide variety of like getting your chicken with like a drumstick, like with the meat on or skin on. That's what I'm trying to say. Like skin
Yeah.
on, for instance, not just chicken breast all the time. Rotating between ground beef, steak, ground turkey in there, eggs, fish, seafood, right? Like your whole food. I say your whole food meats. I don't know. I had someone come to me, like their diet journal was like sausage, like like microwave or like frozen chicken. And like, I'm like, okay, like I get that you're trying to get your protein. That was her goal, right? She was trying to increase her protein, but I'm like, you actually want to try to get your protein from like the whole food sources instead of all these packaged and processed meats. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, no, it was super helpful. And it truly is a lifestyle change. But to your point earlier too, when somebody changes their lifestyle, that immediately, the immediate reaction is that is hard, right? And that's why in our culture, we want just the medicine. We want just the pill. We want an easy fix. This is not an easy fix, but this is actually getting to the root of what is going on. And I do think as well that when we start to eat healthier and we start to have a better lifestyle, we feel it more. We're more sensitive when we don't eat that way anymore. And so like it's easier to just get like the frozen chicken, right? And to microwave it or to put it in the oven or whatever. But once you start, at least in my experience too, once you start to learn how to cook those things, it does become so much easier. Like for me, my whole journey with PCOS, it was the diet change that was the what actually moved the needle for me. And at first it was hard. Like I didn't know how to cook these things. I barely even knew how to like brown ground beef. Like I had to YouTube these things. But now that I know how to do it, it comes natural. Like it just is second nature. It's just part of the cooking process for me now. And I'm hoping that that's where it gets to with other people, where it's a hard lifestyle change because we're learning something different about this isn't the typical American diet, right? But when we are, as you mentioned, when you're informed and you're making these better choices, you feel it. You actually feel it in your body. Now, one thing you said towards the beginning of our interview that really intrigued me, and I've been holding the question in my head, and I want to ask is, you said that there are some things in functional medicine that you don't agree with. I would love for you. Let's go there. Let's talk about it, because everything you're saying, like functional medicine is kind of like the up and coming new thing, because people are recognizing we want to get to the root cause of whatever is causing these unwanted symptoms, right? We're getting there, I think, in our culture slowly, but we're getting there. But I have yet to hear somebody talk about, okay, what are some of the maybe drawbacks or the things that you don't agree with?
So, okay, I will try not to be too wordy with this, but I would say I think a lot of the functional medicine testing is not very well grounded, and we don't have good research yet on the reliability, the efficacy of these different tests. Like I use blood chemistry because this has been around for many, many years. The accuracy is very well known. Whereas again, like I'll say that I always hate on the Dutch test. I hate on the Dutch test a lot because
what is that?
So that's when you do like salivary hormone testing. Number one, and so with their ranges, they're using just ranges based on like people who have been getting their tests done, which it's like, well, how do you know what's optimal if all the people asking to get your Dutch test done are people with hormone imbalance symptoms? So that's like number one. And then like number two is that a lot of with these like tests, I'm like, we don't have good, clear, like you did this intervention in a study and you got this result. Like for example, like for PCOS research, inositol, I'll use that example. We have a very clear research on like if you supplement inositol, we see the blood serum androgens go down. With a lot of these functional medicine testing, we don't have the studies of being like, you did this intervention, you saw this marker in this test go down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I think, and so that's like an area that I'm willing to grow. Like, if this research grows, I'm happy to grow with it. I'm always someone willing to change my mind. But also as someone who looks at cycle patterns, as I didn't even mention in my bio that I'm a certified FEM instructor. So, I mean, I can catch hormone imbalances in a cycle chart. I had someone do a Dutch test and from their provider and they weren't cycling. I'm like, why would you do that? You clearly have no hormones if you are not cycling. And we could have just looked at like androgens if they were elevated like in serum and saved you. This test is, mind you, $350, $400, And I think that can go for a lot of testing in the functional medicine space. Like I do run the GI map. It is $350. I do not love that, but the gut is so foundational. And I believe in that a lot. But even so, I don't like hang my hat on like fully like, the gut microbiome. We're still like doing new studies. I'm really looking for patterns. Like, like, do you have a clear infection? Are all of your beneficial bacteria low? Are, looking at patterns instead of like honed in on like one marker, if that makes sense. So I think that's one of my big grief is like people will run thousands of dollars of testing and just to then be like, here's 18 supplements and just do an elimination diet. They don't cover meal structure. They don't tell them exactly what foods to be adding in, right? That's just like, I think that practice is really, really annoying. And I think so many things, and I've seen them in functional medicine, they go way too hard and fast towards like mold, like, and like these other conditions before they didn't focus on like blood sugar and like gut health, number one. Like they skip over these foundations and go straight towards like mold illness and things. And mold illness is absolutely real. I have mold in my house and I had daily hives. It was horrible. I know mold is real and it absolutely caused symptoms. But you don't need to go there first always. So I think sometimes they like really skip over the foundations and then they leave people empty-handed, like they've taken a bunch of money and they're like not that much better. And they've now been left with just like an extremely like limited diet. Like they're like, I can eat like, I can't have any seed oils or anything, never again, or I will die. Like they just leave people like, super fearful. And, so, which is hard for me to hold that opinion at the same time as like, I do some of these functional medicine testing. So, so I think that's, and then these like IV clinics, I don't know if you've heard of like the IVs.
Yes.
They're really cool. I like the idea of them, but they're just super expensive. And I know my program is even expensive as well, but like I'm always very transparent too. Like my program is $3,400. That includes all the lab work. And I'm like pretty set on like never increasing my prices from here. There are people, I heard of someone charging $10,000 for a program with no testing included. No testing included. Like, and I've been told, like our demand has been pretty high, which is like such a blessing. And like, I've had some business coaches be like, that means you need to raise your prices. And I'm like, not really. Like, I think that's a pretty good value for, that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I've seen that with like, there's a few programs out there that are like $7,000, $8,000, no testing, no personalization. You get a blanket protocol, like a blanket elimination diet, and like everyone gets the same supplement routine for the like 4-6 month program.
Oh my gosh.
I agree with
well, and at that point, you're just copying and pasting. Like, if I'm paying you, and even, I mean, even a couple $1,000s, that is definitely an investment still, but
Mhm.
it sounds like you are getting a very comprehensive
Yeah.
idea of what you're deficient in, what you need to start eating, what you need to stop
Mhm.
eating, lifestyle, all of that. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. And in our program too, like we are also like, I very much say it's also a coaching program because you mentioned this and I won't go on a soapbox, but like the American lifestyle right now is not suitable to live healthy. So, part of my work with clients is yes, I tell them all these things, but then I'm working with them to be like, how can we make this possible into your life? You know, and that's like that's the most important thing you could do because if you're not helping someone make it work in their life, then your protocol doesn't do anything if they can't do it. Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's where, the coaching aspect comes in. We do weekly check-in forms like, hey, what's going on and how can we help you?
Yeah.
What questions can I answer? So, I'm really big. Integrity is like one of my biggest things. And like, on my feedback form, I'm like, is our program worth it? Like, would you recommend it? And, thank God I've always gotten like 10 out of 10. Yes. Like, thank God. Or else I'd be like very concerned. But I just think it's important. Quality is really important. I think a lot of people also see like functional medicine as this shiny thing they can just charge a lot of money for, and not provide like really high quality care is my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but
Well, and so praise God, we have amazing women like you who are willing to go the extra mile and actually give the people what they want. I wanted to ask before we end our time, you mentioned being a FEM instructor. So I wanted to ask, is that so FEM for the listeners who are not aware of FEM? It's another method of fertility tracking. And so Ginny, you as a FEM instructor, you can teach women how to chart their cycles as well. Is this something that's typical in your routine? Like, do you always have the women that you're working with charting their cycles as well, or is that more of like an added bonus benefit? Like, where do you include that in your practice?
Yeah, so we have a whole library of self-paced modules. When it comes to like working with us, you get lifetime access to those modules. And one of those sections of those modules is all the FEM modules. So learning to chart your cycle, what your cycle patterns mean, how to avoid or achieve pregnancy, using cycle charting. So have all those modules there. And I do pretty much have every single client learn to cycle chart if they're not, but I'm in this privileged place that pretty much everyone comes to us already cycle charting. So I feel
Oh,
like
that's amazing.
it is amazing. Like everyone's like Creighton. But I'm like, I miss talking about cycle charting. Like the joy I used to get from like being like, you can chart your cycle and know what it says about your hormones. Like I don't get to say that
Yes.
anymore because like everyone was already cycle charting and they're already like, my hormones are off. I already know it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
shoot.
But
So it's
that's also the beauty of this movement. Like
rare.
that's the whole reason I started this podcast is because I want to get this information out there. And now that we are seeing a change in our culture of women starting to learn the benefits of cycle tracking, whether it is to achieve and avoid pregnancy, but also because of I'm already getting excited talking about it. Like it's just because it gives us so much good information. So that's awesome that they're already knowing
Yeah.
how to chart. But if they don't, then that's an instruction that you give
I
them as
definitely
well.
get them on cycle charting, and then we can talk through that in our appointments as well. Like, any issues you're having, coaching in that aspect as well. So yeah, I've tried to make it as full spectrum as possible because yeah, I don't want people to be like, oh, now you have to go to this person to learn that. I
Yeah.
try my best, to try to do it all, but that also makes it hard for me trying to hire practitioners. I'm like, so you need to be like a certified fertility instructor, and you need to have like deep understanding of like lab testing, and you need to be trained in like functional nutrition, and like I like people to also have a really good understanding of NAPRO technology because we work really alongside NAPRO doctors a lot. So it's kind of a high ticket. So if anybody has that clinical knowledge, just by the way, if you're listening to this podcast, please reach out to me. But no offense,
You
don't
meet
reach
the
out to me if
criteria.
you're like an ICU nurse trying to get into functional medicine. Like I totally get it. Go look into my bio on my about page on my website. You can see all the continuing education that I've done, and you can start there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I need some well-seasoned practitioners would be amazing.
Oh man. And with somebody with that criteria that you just said, like that's a powerhouse woman.
Yeah,
Like
they're
that
probably
is,
doing something on their own. So
yeah. I don't know. The Lord works in crazy ways. We'll see. But Ginny, this has been amazing. I've learned, I keep learning so much from you and just all of the things and this whole idea of functional medicine, nutrition, it really is, I think, the baseline for women's health. So I'm so grateful for what you're doing. If somebody wants to reach out to you, find you, how would they do that?
Yeah. I just want to have a comment too, okay, really
Yes,
fast,
please do.
is that my viewpoint is that nutrition and functional medicine, like what I do, is foundational. If we need to build on that with medication, you already mentioned this, but I think it's really important that we orient our brains because people are trying to do one or the other. And it's like nutrition is foundational. Every cell in your body is being built from what you've eaten, right? It is universal. Nutrition is foundational. So, but if you need medication on top of that, that's okay. Right. And then you can build from there. So I think that's how we should view it instead of one or the other, because I think that's what's happening right now, unfortunately. So wanted to leave with that comment, but where they can find me is I'm on Instagram at the Woman's Health RN. If you type in Woman's Health RN, you will not find me. It is the Woman's Health RN on Instagram. That's also my website is the Woman's Health RN. And then definitely I can give you any links to any of my free guides too. I have 4 free guides. So go look on my Instagram, go look on my page. You'll find them there too.
Yeah, you mentioned the free guide about the testing that you do, and I'm gonna go look at that right now. I'm super intrigued.
That one also has an extreme deep dive into cycle charting and what your cycle chart is telling you about your hormones. And some places to start with nutrition. So that's my really comprehensive guide. It comes with like a 30-minute free training. People told me, why are you offering this for free? Just saying. And I was like, well, I just feel like I can. I don't know. Like it's still not, it's still not what we do in our one-on-one consult. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, if you can give me all those links, I will definitely put them in the description below so our listeners can just check it out there. Absolutely. Ginny, thank you so much for this conversation. It was so good to chat with you, and I will talk to you again soon.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Truth and Fertility podcast. If you are enjoying this content, it would be amazing if you could leave a 5-star review. That helps me tremendously to be able to continue to produce these episodes for you. Remember that these podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon, and YouTube. And you can always go to my website, truthandfertility.com, to learn more. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week.